How's it going, Jason? It's great to get you on the podcast finally. It's been a couple months since we started trying to get this thing scheduled, and I really appreciate you taking the time, especially during this like crazy holiday season, to come on and talk with me for an hour, right?
Yeah, it's been like you said, we were talking before the recording button hit of just how crazy it was in December, and like it's hard to schedule time off, but I'm glad we could get it going for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jason, for those that don't know, right? Maybe they've been living under a rock or something. Why don't you tell people how you got started in cybersecurity? Maybe what was that first experience like that kind of, tickled your brain, so to speak, in a way that was like, maybe I should go down this route.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I was always a computer kid, right? Video games, computers. I remember when I was a kid going to we had like a book exchange at school where you could like take a book that you have from home and exchange it for a book that other people brought. And I think one of the books that I traded for was actually like an MS-DOS, it was like a thick, chonky book. Like it was huge. And so like I had a computer at a very young age. My dad, he recognized right away that like personal computers were going to be like a thing. And so I learned DOS at a pretty young age. And so I was hacking games and stuff like that, with very simple like text editing, hex editing, and then memory editing at a pretty early age. But I kind of fell out of it. I didn't think that there was a career in that. And then actually, when I was 20, a whole bunch of my friends were older than me. And so they were all going to the bars already to go out and drink and stuff like that. And so, I asked one of my buddies, I was like, hey, do you know anybody who can get me a fake ID? And he was like, yeah, he's like, I can get you a fake ID. And so, back then it was a prohibitive amount of money for a college student, right? It was like 150 bucks for a fake ID or something like that. And so it took forever to get it. And then I finally got it and it was crap. It was like the worst fake ID I'd ever seen. As someone who didn't know IDs, it was even bad. And so I tried to use it and got immediately like kicked out at like a bar, or, like that we normally went to, and or that we weren't really went to, but they normally went to. And so I got really mad, and this is a reoccurring thing in my life is like if like like I kind of get like hate inspired a little bit. I don't know what that means really, but like, like if I kind of get in my head that I could probably do this, like I could make a fake ID. I just have to learn how to do it and like figure it out. I'm a computer guy. So back then there wasn't Tor yet. And so there was really just a set of forums. Carter's Market was one of the biggest ones. And then Shadow Crew was another one. And so I started going to the forums and learning about making fake IDs. And so I purchased the equipment and started building them, got really good at it actually. I never really like sold any. I just thought it was like a cool thing to be doing, young and impressionable or whatever. And so at some point, basically, I was learning, and then Shadow Crew, the forum I was on, got taken down by the Secret Service in like a multinational, like one of the first really big cybercrime raids. The guys I knew on there were all Carters, and there's this triad of kind of the underground, and that even still exists today. There are the people who make fake credit cards, and then there are people who make fake IDs so that you can cash out with the credit cards, and then there are the hackers who hack the credit card numbers so that you can have a whole bunch of credit card numbers to put on fake credit cards. And that was the triad back then. It works a little bit differently today with like chip and pin and stuff like that, but the underground does kind of revolve around these supply chains. And so I knew a lot of the hackers then, and it was back in the early days of web hacking from those forums, and they were like teaching me about like SQL injection and cross-site request forgery, cross-site scripting, like all of these bugs when they were brand new in the web hacking space. And LFIs and SQL injection were obviously the biggest ones. They were like, like those are the ones that could get you like RCE basically. And so I learned a little bit there. And then the forum got raided, and then I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I took this elective at my city college that was called Ethical Hacking and Network Defense. And I was kind of in an IT job at that, but I was very low level, right? It was like running cable, fixing printers, reimaging laptops, stuff like that. I was working an IT job. And so when my instructor started teaching the course, it was already outdated. Like it was super old and outdated. And I was like, hey, have you ever heard of like SQL injection and local file includes and like all these things? And he's like, no, not really. And so he pulled me aside because he asked me to like show one of those vulnerabilities. And I was like, okay, like I can show you. There's this awesome thing called like Hack Me Bank that I'll show you on back in the day. And so I stood it up, I showed the class, and he's like, hey, you know that there's a career called penetration testing. that people do this and you can do it legally. You can like hack things and you can get paid for it. And I was like, I had no idea that was a thing. And so ever since then, I have just been obsessed with offensive security, all forms of it, almost all forms of it. And so I left my IT job. Well, it's not quite true. At the place I was at, where I was like low level IT person, I would go bother the security people, and I'd be like, "Hey, we have cross site scripting here," and they're like, "What is cross site scripting?" And then I'd explain it to them, and I'd be like, "Hey, we have SQL injection here, or we have like a indirect object reference or something." And so I just was this kid who kept bugging them about security stuff when they were security people and they didn't know anything about web security. They knew a lot about network security and architectural kind of like planning for security, but no web security.